All right. Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here today for NorQuest Unscripted, the National Accessibility Week version. And I have with me today Bean Gill. I was just chatting with Bean and I was letting her know that this is actually the very first event of the very first National Accessibility Week at NorQuest. So we're so excited to have Bean here and talk with us today. So welcome, Bean.
Thanks. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm super pumped that I'm like the first event. That's wicked.
Oh yeah, yeah. So before we get into chatting with Bean and having a little bit more of a talk there, just an overview of some of the things that are happening for National Accessibility Week this week. So obviously we're starting off here with Unscripted, but tomorrow we'll have Alt Text Fest. Which is looking at alt text and all kinds of things as to how to create, how to create alt text. On the June 3rd, on Wednesday, we have read and write workshops and exploring read and write. So be sure to get out and check that out. We'll be looking at work integrated learning and supporting individuals with disabilities as they transition into employment. And there's a ton of things. Head on over to the queue and you can find out a bunch more information about what's going on this week. So now let me introduce our guest, Bean Gill. So I have her bio here. So Bean Gill was born in Edmonton to an East Indian family and has 3 crazy siblings. She grew up to become an X-ray technologist whose career was cut short by an unforeseen event that left her paralyzed from the waist down in 2012. Now happily divorced and running a growing nonprofit organization called REU Paralysis Recovery Center, she is changing the way the public sees people with disabilities. She advocates for equality in all aspects and uses her loud voice to raise awareness and create change in the world around her. She is the reigning Miss Wheelchair Canada, won Global's Woman of Vision Award. She was recognized by Mattel as one of Canada's top 60 inspiring women as part of Barbie's 60th anniversary. She also won Top 40 Under 40 in 2019 and RBC's Women of Influence Award in the Ones to Watch category. A few steps towards making the plan, or a few steps in her plan to change the world. Wow, that's a lot. Congratulations on all the accolades.
Thank you. Yep, it definitely is a lot, and it's very surreal, but it's really nice to be recognized for your work.
Yeah. I was going to say it really is a sort of just speaks to the amount of work that you do and the amount of connection and putting yourself out there to talk about the things that you talk about. So great.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm happy to do it.
So on that, let's talk about some of the things that you talk about. I got a bunch of questions, but maybe there may be more questions from people in our chat comments. And if there's anything that you just want to really dig into, let's do that. So the first question I have for you, and I'm always curious to ask people this: do you identify as having a disability?
I mean, yes. That question could go either way, and I guess changes depending on the day. But yeah. I think of myself as an able-bodied person, even though my body doesn't work like an able body. But there's no denying the fact that I have a disability, right? I use a wheelchair, and so yeah, it is part of me, but it just doesn't define me.
Yeah. I like that. I like how it's a part, but it doesn't define. And I think it's always interesting to find out, that people that may be perceived as having a disability to understand how it is you identify. So what does it mean, when you're saying having a disability? What does that mean to you?
Well, I feel like when you say somebody has a disability, it's either like an intellectual or a physical impairment of any kind, or if you need like a mobility device, even wearing glasses. Right? Most people don't think of wearing glasses as having a disability, but if you really think about it, that's a disability because your eyes do not work the same as a 100% able-bodied person, right? And being disabled, I feel like, is more of an attitude. And so, I obviously went through a phase where I was disabled. I said I couldn't do this, I can't do that. I'm not able to, I can't do that, that attitude of I can't because of the limiting beliefs that society puts on you or you put on yourself. And so there is a difference between having a disability and then being disabled.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You're talking about the attitudes, and do you feel that at that point you were saying, you definitely did feel disabled. You were saying to yourself, I can't do this, I can't do that. Was that, how much of that was your internal belief that you can't, and how much of that was sort of the message you're getting from outside in?
Good question. So I was born and raised here in Edmonton, right? And so I grew up with some programming, right? Everybody does. And it's the way your grandparents were, their parents, your parents, and it's their beliefs that kind of get put on you, right? And as an x-ray tech, like I've worked with people with disabilities, I didn't really think to discriminate against them or anything. They're just like, they're there, right? And then when I sustained a disability, a spinal cord injury, your attitude kind of goes from then all of those stigmas and stuff that have been implanted in your brain that you never gave any thought to before have suddenly come to light. Like one of my first thoughts was, who's going to date a girl in a wheelchair? No one's going to date a girl in a wheelchair. I don't want to be the girl in a wheelchair, right? And then it's just like, well, now I can't do kickboxing anymore. I can't do yoga anymore. I can't do the stairs in the river valley. And a lot of that is your own programming. And then that kind of reaching out to those negative thoughts and thinking about all the things you can't do. On that same side, you have the doctors and the medical side saying, you're never going to walk again. You're never going to, you pee on your own. You're never going to poop on your own. You're never going to do this, do that, whatever, run, jump, ski, right? Rock climb, whatever you want to do. It's a very doom and gloom attitude in the spinal cord injury world. And so that can have a really big effect on what you do moving forward from the date of your disability. Right.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. So that kind of ties nicely into, all the accolades that you have, but you're also I want to make sure I get this right, the executive director of Reu Paralysis Recovery Center.
Yeah.
So I guess your journey of, as you said, becoming disabled, and then how did that all tie together to you becoming the executive director of Reu Paralysis Recovery Center?
Well, it's kind of crazy. My story is very long and very complex, but I'll give you guys the nutshell version of it. So I was paralyzed in July 2012, so coming up on 8 years here, and I was in Vegas when it happened. It was Friday the 13th, and I had suddenly really excruciating pain in my low back. The pain lasted a couple of minutes, and then I wasn't able to move my right leg. I was moving my left leg around. A couple minutes later, it went prickly from my hip to my toes, and within 10 minutes, I was left paralyzed from the waist down. And since I was in Vegas, I had to go to the hospital there, and then honestly, it's a really long story, and I have it on our YouTube channel and other podcasts and stuff, so I won't waste the full half an hour on my story because I easily could. Yeah. But I was always into fitness and stuff before I was paralyzed. I, grew up as the fat sister in the family, and that does a number on your head. And so I started working out when I was 12, and when I was paralyzed, it was like I immediately forgot about all of my fitness training, and I relied heavily on the physio and what other people were telling me to do. And I was doing good attitude-wise until I guess I was also misdiagnosed. So when I left Vegas, I left with a diagnosis of conversion disorder, which is where you're so stressed out that your brain tells your body to shut down. It made a lot of sense because 2012 was the worst year of my life. Oh my God, see, my story is so complex. I don't even know what to skip and what not to. Anyways, I was doing good for a few months, right? Really trying to focus. I knew my physio was important. My muscles were melting away by the hour. And so I knew I had to do whatever I needed to do to keep what I had and to build more. And so I was doing physio 4 times a week. And It was in September that I was laying in bed, and I was thinking about wiggling my big toe, and thinking about it, and I thought I did it, and I pulled the sheet down, popped my head over, and I was doing it. And that was the first time I had been able to move anything below my level of injury, which is T10, T11. And it just kind of ignited a fire under me to like keep going. At the same time, though, at Thanksgiving 2012, I got a real diagnosis. So I had another MRI, and I wasn't expecting to see anything on that because there was nothing on any of the other ones that I had. And that's where they said that they saw a lesion in my spinal cord at T10, T11, looks like transverse myelitis. So I'm an X-ray tech. I translated that. That means inflammation of the spinal cord. Mine's obviously here. Next step, obviously Google. So I Googled it, and then, just seeing all of the side effects and all of the negative stuff about it, it kind of tipped me over into a depression, which I think is normal for anybody who goes through a traumatic experience. But I became very like, woe is me. Why did this happen to me? What am I doing to do what I do to deserve this? Blah, blah, blah. I was eating my feelings, and I quickly gained a lot of weight because when you're seated, and I was in a bariatric wheelchair because I had to take one from Vegas. And so you don't notice it, right? Anyways, fast forward a few months, I was still in a very dark, dark place. I was not a happy person to be around. And I got admitted into the Glen Rose Hospital here, and they weighed me. When they weighed me, I was like, no, you're wrong. Do it again. And they did it again. I was like, oh my God. Okay. I'm like, well, you guys are in control of my food, so limit it. I need 1,200 calories. That's it. And I ate like cardboard and hot sauce is pretty much what I ate. But it was also in that hospital that my perspective shifted, and that led me on the path to the path that I'm on right now. I was having lunch with my roommate, who was also paraplegic, young woman like me, and another girl who was a young quadriplegic who was paralyzed right from the base of her skull down. As she sat there like this, unable to move, and her mom was feeding her lunch, she said, will either of you guys walk again? And my roommate's like, well, this bitch will. And we laughed, right? And I was overcome with guilt. And like at that point, I was standing with a walker and braces, and I wasn't independent, but I knew I would be. And the other girl, she said, well, I'd be happy if I could move an effing finger. And it was that immediately right after she said that, I was like, whoa, okay, Bean, you're not allowed to feel sorry for yourself anymore. Right? Like you have so much to be thankful for. And that's when my attitude shifted from being sad about what I lost to being grateful for what I have. And to this day, I write my gratitude journal every day because there's so much to be grateful for, and it's so easy to get caught up in the negativity of life. Anyways, that put me on a path to get back to the gym, get back out there, be active. I ended up in California at a place called Project Walk, which is a spinal cord injury recovery center. And I fell in love with the program. The results I saw were incredible. I actually felt my butt muscles like contract when I was there. And I'll never forget that feeling because your butt and your hamstrings are one of the hardest muscles to get back when you after assisting a spinal cord.
Right.
Anyways, I was getting a home program from them, and I needed to find a kinesiology student to help me with my home program here. So I contacted the U of A. They found out my information as a job posting, and I got about 12 responses. And one of them was from Nancy, who is my current business partner and still my trainer. And this is something she's always wanted to do. She just didn't know she could do it in Canada. And so she was planning to move to the States after she graduated because there are so many centers in the States, and literally a handful in Canada. And so when we found each other, it was like divine intervention because the two of us are complete opposites. There's no way we would have met in the real world, but I'm glad my spinal cord injury brought us together. And then we have been talking about opening a center here from the very beginning, but I was not in the right headspace, and she was still in school, so it wasn't going to work. Then in 2016, she got a full-time job offer from Florida. And I was like, no, you can't go. And so she said, if I'm going to stay here, then we got to do something worthwhile. So we, when you put stuff out into the universe and you really believe it and you really want it, like honestly, the doors just opened and the universe is like, here, here's a business. Now you're going to be a boss. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm ready, but here we are. Yeah, and then so on April 3rd of 2017, RIU officially opened, and we just had our 3rd birthday, and we're going strong.
Oh wow, that's fantastic.
That's my
That is a great story, and maybe over in the comments or somewhere we can find your YouTube or your podcast where you where you go more in depth, because I'm sure that people would love to know the story. So you'd said your business partner was moving down to Florida, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're going to go down and do new neuro rehabilitation down there.
Yeah.
So before we came on, you were talking a little bit about the state of neuro rehabilitation within Canada, and I'd said, "Oh, is this new?" And you said, "No, new to Canada." Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. So, well, I'm going to specifically talk about activity-based training because that's what I know about. Neurorehabilitation is a very wide field. There's lots of things that contribute to neurorehabilitation.
It's hard to say.
In my opinion, activity-based training is a big component of neurorehabilitation. And so Canada, frankly, is in the dark ages when it comes to this stuff. Our medical system does not believe that the brain and spinal cord can regenerate and can heal itself. It was wide thought that the central nervous system does not regenerate, and that's why the long-term thought process has been: be thankful for what you have and just live your life, right? We're going to get you independent, and that's it. So Canada is about 20 years behind the States, and the States is about 50 years behind Europe. We are very, very much in the dark ages when it comes to this stuff. I mean, there's studies and there's, technology out there. Actually, Iran is huge in spinal cord injury recovery. Like, they have the products that are coming out of there are insane. Same with Japan. And, but because it's not FDA approved, you can't come into Canada, right? And honestly, activity-based training too, we operate as a private business. So we didn't have to go get approval from Health Canada. Right. Okay. And so, but they would have had an issue with it.
Right. Right. So that's where the issue lies, is that it's as of right now, it's not FDA approved.
Well, it's like activity-based training isn't regulated by any governing body, right? And so that's a bit of an issue right now. And so we're working with a bunch of the other centers across the states to work together to put together something so that it can be regulated, so that everybody is giving the best information all the time, right? And the best training. And so that's something we're working towards. We're also going to be working towards, one of our goals is to create an activity-based training course and have it be part of the kinesiology degree program at the U of A. And so if anyone's watching at the U of A, that's what we want to do. But that's
or anybody's watching at NorQuest, and this might be
yeah. I mean, we just want to help people, and the results that I've seen personally from my recovery are insane. Like, when I was first paralyzed, I could not move from here down. I had no balance. I would just flop over. I couldn't sit unsupported. I had to be in my backrest, had to have pillows beside me. And now, I can do back extension all the way back down. I can lay to the side. I can, I drive my car with my foot. I stand every day. I stand to brush my teeth. There's so much bowel, bladder control, so much that your brain is capable of. And this is what we're trying to really shift. And it's happening, right? As the newer doctors come in, as technology advances, and as studies are produced and released, people are believing, hey, okay, maybe we are wrong about this. Maybe something can happen, and it can. We're proof.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's very exciting, and it's exciting. So not only are you are you executive director for a center that does this right now, but it's great to hear of your advocacy to develop it more and to get more information within North America.
Yeah, we need to. I mean, one of our goals is to bring Canada into the forefront of neuro recovery, right? And like I said, we work alongside all of the other centers in Canada because, to me, there's no competition. There's hundreds of thousands of people with disabilities, if not millions, right?
Yeah.
And so the more people providing good service, the more people they're going to help.
Yeah.
And that's what we want.
Yeah. Awesome. Sorry, I'm just looking at my question. I've got my cheat sheets here, so if I don't have my cheat sheets, we'll just go off in work. So you chatted a little bit about neurorehabilitation there. So today we're kicking off Accessibility Week at NorQuest. So from your opinion or your lived experience of being a wheelchair using Edmontonian, how are we doing? How's the city doing with accessibility?
Not bad. I mean, we're definitely a lot better than what we used to be, but there's definitely lots of room for improvement. Generally people are talking more about accessibility, and the conversations are happening, which means people care, right? And I know within my circle of friends, after I got paralyzed, people started noticing curb cuts and accessible parking and accessible doors, and just all these things that you never really pay attention to, because if it's not in your circle, you're not gonna, and I was guilty of that too before being paralyzed. But with accessibility, I mean, one of the things that Edmonton is lacking and continually getting worse with is snow removal. Like, why? Edmonton's been a winter city since literally Pangea broke up. So why are we getting worse? Why are we not the experts at snow removal, right? So that's one thing I really want to change, because it's really frustrating being trapped in your house because your neighbor didn't shovel their sidewalk.
Right. Yeah. And that's so interesting that you say that. We're in this COVID world now where we hear like, oh, I can't go outside because of these things. And so it's sort of, I think your point of, well, my neighbor didn't shovel my sidewalk, so I can't go out. I think that might hit a little bit closer right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, people are saying, right, like when all this COVID stuff happened, all of those people with disabilities were like, well, welcome to our lives.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe a good segue as to how can we break down attitudinal barriers about accessibility? How can an organization embed that accessibility to their culture?
Love it. Great question, Vanya.
Great question. So attitudinal barrier, first of all, starts to be broken down by recognizing that you have it, right? And by being self-aware and really thinking about your thoughts and like, why am I thinking this? And recognizing that, hey, I have a bias. I didn't realize I did, but I do. And once you recognize it, you can change it, right? I mean, I tell people all the time, the only person who's in control of your thoughts is you. And so you have to change yourself. You have to change the way you feel. And if this is something, I mean, there's a lot of ways to do that, but you have to find what really resonates with you. I find what's best is find an organization that helps people with disabilities and go volunteer. Volunteer your time, go immerse yourself in the world, and you'll quickly find out that people with disabilities are people, straight up, normal people, right? Maybe our bodies don't work, maybe our brains don't work the same, but still people. We deserve respect and we deserve, dignity. And I actually had a police officer ask me, how do I talk to somebody with a disability? I said, good question. How would you talk to somebody without a disability? Just like that. You can ask them their name, ask them how they're doing, where are you from, what'd you get up to today, sports, weather, movies, whatever, because people with disabilities enjoy all of those things too. And, it's not something that's rocket science. It's not something that you need a degree to do. It's literally just a shift in your thinking and in your thought process. And like I said, the only person who's in control is you.
Right. Yeah, that's lovely. Kiara, I see maybe we have a few more questions that are coming in there.
There's not a ton of questions, but there is this one that I think is useful to kind of wrap up with. We've got about 5 minutes left. Which is, what sort of resources do you recommend? Of course, you can talk about resources and then tell some stories about it. 5 minutes is a pretty long time on here, but I think there's probably hundreds of resources, or maybe you're the only one.
No, there's lots of resources for sure. So in the city of Edmonton here, there's the Voices of Albertans with Disabilities Society, VADS, they do great advocacy work. They also will come into workplaces and do a talk about etiquette with people with disabilities, because this is something that's changing. There's more people with disabilities in the workforce, and employers want their team members to be able to interact with this person with respect and how they want to be treated. And so VAD saw that there's this need, and so they created this program where they will take 2 people and they will send them to your office or wherever, or virtually, I guess now, and talk to you about etiquette with people with disabilities. And no question is a dumb question, and I want to throw that out there too. Like, if you have a question for me that you feel kind of embarrassed to ask, or you'll be like, I don't know, I feel like a stupid question, ask it, because there is no stupid question. And I enjoy when people ask me about my disability or about my culture or about anything else, because it I think by education then you kind of change the stigmas. There's also a bunch of other groups: the Brain Care Center, Spinal Cord Injury Alberta, Cerebral Palsy Association of Alberta, MS Canada, or MS Alberta. Pretty much you pick a diagnosis, there's going to be like a nonprofit or charity with that. And if that piques your interest, right, just contact them and ask them. And this is what they do, and they are more than happy to help. And same with REU too. If you want to come volunteer, right now we can't have volunteers. If you want to come volunteer, we would more than happily take you at our events and stuff too. We encourage kids to come volunteer at our wheelchair wash, because you're just washing wheelchairs by hand, and it's a great way to introduce them to the world of disability.
Right. Awesome. And so how is COVID-19 and everything sort of how's it impacted REU?
I mean, we've been closed. Today is day 76 of being closed, and all of our events have been canceled. We moved our 5-kilometer walk, run, and roll into an online platform, so it's happening on July 20th. Stay tuned at our website for more information on that, which should be up there hopefully by the end of this week. We've been closed, and so it's been hard. It's been hard for a lot of our clients to be home and to be isolated. The mental health side of things is really, really difficult. You're isolated enough already, and now, REU was a safe space for people to come to and be themselves and not be judged, and they don't have that anymore. And, I try to keep in contact with all the clients and try to keep, but I mean, that's hard too. And so it's been difficult, but at the same time, everything has a positive outcome, and we are looking at the positives with this, right? First of all, everything's going to be so much cleaner in the public, and I'm a germaphobe, so I am all on board for that. Right. And people having to stay 6 meters apart, I'm actually down for that too, because I don't like people in my personal bubble, right? And so if you look at the positive things, this is life, right? What are we going to do? We got to keep moving with it.
Yeah. Nice. And thank you for bringing that up, the idea of linking the mental health piece, and that REU is more than a place for neuro rehabilitation and physical pieces, but it's also a mental health
of course
piece as well. There's a whole lot of mental health connected there.
I mean, if you think about the human body, right? Your body, mind, your spirit, you cannot separate them. They are all together. And you can go to a doctor for your ailments or whatever, but at REU, we want to help the whole you, right? And so that mental health piece is a huge part of it, and we're more than happy to be a resource and to be a safe space for people who need it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Bean. Kiara, any other last comments or anything from our comment section?
It doesn't look like there's any more questions, but people find you incredibly inspiring, Bean. So thank you so much for coming on. Do either of you have any sort of closing remarks?
I mean, the best way to be inclusive and to get rid of the attitudinal barrier is to be patient, to be understanding, to not be judgmental, and above all else, be kind. Be kind to yourself, be kind to your loved ones, be kind to strangers. It shows and it matters.
Fantastic. I think that's a perfect sentiment to end us on today. Thank you so much, Bean, for coming in and chatting and being our first ever event at NorQuest National Accessibility Week. So
awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Say goodbye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.